Hello, everyone. Welcome to iCritic Live. This is the podcast where we talk about entertainment, pop culture, and life in between. I'm your host, Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and thank you so much for spending a few minutes, maybe more than a few minutes of your time here with me today. And you know, it's been a while since we've talked about MoviePass. That's the old card if you're seeing it. It's been a while since we talked about MoviePass, and you know, there's been a lot that's been going on with the company. So much so that I decided, you know what? We had the MoviePass CEO on here once. Would it be crazy to reach out to him again and see if he would come on to do a second interview? And would he subject himself to my quirky sense of humor again? Answer is yes, he would be more than happy to do that. So please welcome Stacy Spikes, the co-founder of MoviePass. Welcome, Stacy.
Hey, Kev, I don't know about the more than happy part. You just threw it like he was just jumping up for joy. But no, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks.
Well, I always try to look on the side of life. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us. And we're the first. Well, I have a question I want to ask you first, but the first thing I want to mention, because we have to get this joke out of the way, I want to say congratulations on securing a $100 million capital investment from GEM Token. Like, that's a far cry from when MoviePass lost $100 million a week.
Oh, yeah. Totally different world. Yeah,
totally.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. So let's start out with a easy question, a fun question, if you will. You, as the MoviePass CEO, I assume you use your own product once in a while.
I do.
What was the last movie you saw with MoviePass?
You know, I just went to see this independent film called Tornado, which was, I just saw it a few days ago, and it is about, it's set in the 1800s, and it is about a traveling troupe. And part of this traveling troupe is a former samurai and his daughter, and they're on the road and they run into some bad guys. He gets killed, and her name is Tornado, and she lives up to her name. Let's just say it's very Quentin Tarantino-esque. And so that's what that was the last film I saw. And the film before that was it Lilo and Stitch? Or yeah, I think it was Lilo and Stitch before that.
And
okay, Mission Impossible before that.
Yes, I have not seen Tornado, but I saw those other two, though I didn't use my MoviePass card for either of those. The last movie I used my MoviePass card with was a 4K restoration of Akira Kurosawa's Ron.
Ooh,
which I'd never seen before. And boy, folks, if you want to see a great movie, check out Ron.
Yeah, I went and saw the same. I used my MoviePass. I went to see the same restoration at the Film Forum. And it was, I'm sorry, IFC. Sorry, IFC on West 3rd Street in the Village. And I had seen it on video, but I had not seen it in theaters, and it was great. It's really great.
Oh yeah, those visuals. I mean, there were actually scenes in there where I was watching it, and the thought, how did they do that, crossed my mind. So, there's no computers or anything like that back then. So you look at it, and okay, some of the blood looks a little corny, but the scope of that thing, it's like, my goodness.
Yeah, and they're riding on these horses, and the falling off, and them falling off the castle walls, and I'm like, that looks, it was intense.
Yeah, you watch that and you kind of wonder, like, I hope someone didn't get too hurt making this thing. So
exactly.
Excellent. So it's great to know that we are still using MoviePass for great movies, which is what it was made for. But the last time you came on here, you talked about how you wanted MoviePass to be more than just a movie ticketing company. You had other ideas in mind, and you were very coy about what those ideas were, which is probably good because your predecessor made this bold claim that they were going to make this wild acquisition, and people are going to wonder, how did they do that? And then they never ended up making that acquisition. So the lesson there is probably don't announce things until they're ready.
Right.
And so, but you actually announced Mogul. Now, at first, it was just a little teaser website. We didn't really know what it was, but of course, me being the fanboy I am, I signed up for it anyway to be notified. And apparently, it is a fantasy entertainment platform for Hollywood, kind of in the way that some apps are for like fantasy football. You're trying to be for movies, if I have this correct. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Mogul?
Yeah, that's exactly perfect setup. So one of the things we were looking at was we really admire the way sports fans are able to engage with the game and the activities in so many more ways. And taking learnings from that, we said, well, why isn't there a fantasy sports league for the movie industry? Why can't I make a fantasy studio or have these actors and these directors as part of my team or whatever? And I think it comes from seeing film fans talk trash to each other in the same way that movie fans do. So I remember recently hearing everyone talk trash about Minecraft, and even the biggest predictions were, oh, it's going to do 60 million. And I think it north of 100
More than that.
weekend. Yeah. And
yeah, more than that. I think it was a 150 or something. It was
right.
crazy.
And it doubled expectations, and it kind of became a meme movie. And every time people heard, I am Steve, they lost their minds. And that's part of that fandom that we said, if there's a fantasy league for this, fans can actually participate. They can engage in the outcome of things. And that's where we said, hey, why don't we build that? And so we built out the prototypes for it. We're starting to deploy it. We already have 400,000 people on the wait list for it. And we're starting to let people in as we tweak it and get it where it needs to be. But it's coming. And so we're very, very excited about it. It's our first new product in over 12 years.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, the company was busy going bankrupt and then being saved in that 12 year or so.
Time off for bad behavior and time off for some good behavior.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's definitely going to be fun. And, I mean, of course, there's going to be some concerns about whether or not apps like this feed into gambling and stuff like that. So I tell people the same thing, like, look, just, my parents go to Vegas, they go to the thing with like $100 and they don't spend any more than that. Just have some self-discipline. It can just be a little bit of fun. I have my Oscar parties where we have like a little Oscar pool. And one of the ways we keep it fun is like, okay, everyone has to contribute, but no one contributes more than $1 per category so that it stays fun. Now, is the app going to just do box office predictions, or are you going to do things like Oscar and Golden Globe predictions and things like that? Is there a possibility that this could maybe even expand to like, music awards and things like that instead of just movies?
Yeah. So we're going to start in our backyard. And yes, so award shows or film festivals will be part of it. Then you'll also move into, say, box office, but per screen average, sentiment, what the sentiment score might end up being. And there's different
score would be.
Yeah, exactly. And then also the ability to try and calculate or figure out not all movies, so where movies fall in a ranking. So, for example, this was Mission Impossible #8. Well, where will it fit in the box office between the last 7? When one types, we have categories like head to head. So let's say there's a concert film, and the last highest grossing concert film was Taylor Swift. Well, when Beyonce's concert film's coming out and her fans can the Beehive beat the Swifties, right, in attendance. And so it actually creates fan engagement. And so where with a sporting event, you don't participate in any way, shape, or form other than you're being in the auditorium and you're yelling. With this, we're building in that there's actually fan engagement, that it drives physical engagement in the outcome of movies. And so that's part of the excitement about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I mean, because I've been on social media and the discussions of, is this going to get to $1 billion, is ever present for every movie, to the point where if a movie only makes $700 million, oh
right.
darn it,
flop. Right.
Yeah, it's a flop. Here's a good betting category for Mogul. It's like, will Netflix cave to this director and give their movie a theatrical 2-week release? Yes or no? Because boy, that's a high risk, high reward discussion.
Yeah, that's a new category we haven't thought about, but yeah, we'll have to check in on that one.
Yeah, actually, fun story. I've actually kind of nicknamed my MoviePass card the Netflix card, because it primarily gets used at the Bay Theater in Santa Monica, which Netflix owns, and that's where I get to see. So I actually got to see Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul in a theater, thanks to MoviePass.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah. So how's the Mogul thing going to work in terms of participation? Is there going to be like money, or are they going to be participating with credits, like the ones that they currently use?
Yeah, so we're going to start out with credits, and then depending upon when and where licensing happens to bring it into the real world, but it'll be pretend in the beginning, and there will be the chance to say win things or get things with those credits inside of the app. But that's the intent, to look at expanding beyond that as quickly as possible.
Okay, so right now they can use their credits. It's basically just fun, but in the future, maybe someday, the credits can be cashed out for stuff or cash or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Okay, kind of like how Vegas works. You buy the chips and you play your game, and then at the end you take whatever you have left over and you walk home with it.
Exactly.
Except we get to do it with movies, which another category I just thought of. With Wicked for Good, will Evo be supporting and Grande be lead this time? I wonder. For the record, Oscar publicists, they're both lead. But
yes.
Whatever. So you say you have like over 400,000 people on the wait list. Could you tell us how many people are actually using the platform now and what feedback you've been getting?
So there's a few thousand in, and it's really, really early feedback. They're seeing a version that is, we haven't turned on Real Play yet. And Real Play, what I mean by, and we call that season 1. Real Play means that you will actually have real-time data coming in the app every day with box office and sentiment score. So everything's moving in real time. Right now, they're seeing the environment without that. It's more, hey, do you like the look and feel of this? Now, the staging app that I have and the team has, we're seeing it further down. So what's happening is we're deploying, this is kind of what you would call alpha, and then you'll have beta, which they'll be in a real working environment and be able to play with the money and compete with each other. And there's about 4 or 5 games, are what I would call categories, that we've already mapped out. And so we're going to push a game in a category in, let them play with it and get feedback on each one as we build it out. So that's kind of the roadmap. So it's all mapped out, but it's happening in pieces as to not overwhelm everybody all of a sudden at once.
Right, and you want to make sure some features work before you put them out there. I'll never forget for a number of reasons, the presentation of the Xbox One where they were showing the screen that you could swipe left and right and do this. It's like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then you get it, and it's like, it didn't work like that at all. It's like you had to hold your hand, and then you could maybe move. It's like, well, this sucks. This doesn't work at all the way they advertised it. So yes,
it's kind of wild to think about even really big companies, how there'll be product demos and they'll be on stage, and then you get it and you think, wait, how is it so different, or how is it so behind? And yet even really big companies, you can be running very fast and demoing stuff that's not really baked. And so as I've been running the company, I've always been a bit more on the cautious side. I think you don't get multiple bites at the apple to try and impress people. And so take your time, get it right, try and wow them. And we made the announcement once we were far enough along in a lot of that build that we felt confident we were going to launch Mogul and go for it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Now, this might be too long-term a question. Is it intended to always be its own app, or is it eventually going to be integrated into the MoviePass app?
We see it as a standalone, but if you know how you can be in Facebook, but you can go over to Instagram, and if you in Instagram you can go to Reels, Threads. The way you can kind of go back and forth, we see there'll be a light touch that lets you go in between the worlds. But in theory, there's so much build that needs to happen in Mogul. We decided it'll probably be cleaner and easier to be standalone. Also, Mogul, we're expecting that it will be international out of the gate, where we only have clearance to do credit card processing and have that sensitive data here in the US. So that's another reason why you don't want an app that's only approved to work in one territory, and then part of it can be international, and you can't do both. So you need to separate them.
Oh, okay. Well, that definitely makes sense. When I was in Tennessee, I found out my Carl's Jr. app didn't work with Hardee's, even though they're the same company. I had to download the Hardee's. So, I guess there's a thought process behind all that. There was one more question I had about this, and I'm blanking on the question, but so far this sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, especially as it gets, I assume that as it gets more interactive, you'll start sending the notifications out through push notifications and things like that to really keep. Oh, now I remember what the question was. So is Mogul going to have a monthly charge, or is it going to be free to use outside of like the credits you buy?
Yeah, it's going to be free to use. So you can go in. So right now the version is going to be completely free. We're not looking at it. It requires a membership, but there is the possibility of having a membership layer that you give people, some different advantages. Not unlike many different other clubs or groups that you join. But on the beginning, it won't require any type of membership fees.
Yeah.
There's an example where we want to make sure that we can verify that you're a person, you're not a bot. And the one advantage is we're planning on giving preferential treatment to MoviePass members, because we know those are real people, and they're also supporting cinema and they're going. So we don't want just people who say just play on the app, but they don't support going to the movies and seeing movies in theaters. So we think that on a natural level, we should also inspire people to feature that as well. Excuse me. Thank you. So that's one thought, is like, if you're a person who, sorry, I'm going to drink some water here.
Oh, yep. Nope. High quality H2O, right?
Yeah. If you're a person who supports cinema, you go to the movies on a regular basis, we think you're a valued customer. And so that's going to be important to us. How we are separating that out and giving those live members advantages, we'll see. But that makes a big difference to us. You're like ride or die, you're like hardcore. So
oh yeah. Well, the early MoviePass adopters like me, we were your biggest evangelists, if you will.
yeah.
Preaching the gospel.
Well, we thank you.
Yep, and I'm sure we will most likely do the same again for Mogul, especially if it's as fun, because I would love to bet on Wicked winning some Oscars, and then preferably it winning as well, and me being right as well.
There you go.
Although even though Wicked lost last year, I said, look, I don't care that Wicked lost. I just care that Amelia Perez didn't win.
You're heartless. You're heartless. But you're proving my point about the trash talk. I mean, people say that sports fans talk trash. Movie people are worse.
Oh yeah. And I don't know if you've ever read any of my printed reviews, but I mean, when I really love something, I'm over the moon for myself. But when I feel like you've wasted 2 or, God forbid, 3 hours of my time, you're gonna hear about it.
You're gonna hear about it. Oh my goodness!
It's like because I tell people, like, a bad movie, more so than any money, it takes away 2 hours of my time that I will never get back.
That's right. That's right.
Well, anyway, I'm glad to hear that MoviePass is not only raising money and it's adding new products and everything, but the last time I talked, your book, Black Founder, had not come out yet. And so I might have actually asked some other questions had I read this. Well, I technically didn't read it. I listened to the audiobook.
I'm a big audiobook person too.
We'll
just say we read it. We read it.
Yeah. I'll just say this: when it comes to memoirs, especially when the author is reading his or her own book, I feel that tends to be a better experience than reading it myself. I'll say that much. So I listened to this, and actually I listened to it right after I listened to Mitch Lowe's book. And by the way, it's very fascinating to be hearing about the MoviePass story from 2 different points of view and how each person saw how that went down. I will say you sound like the more credible of the two witnesses, especially since one of them kind of admitted to wire fraud. Maybe we'll talk about that a bit. But some of the things that I did not know that you had accomplished, I didn't know you made Urban World, that festival. It's Urban World, right? Or was it Urban Fest?
Yeah, Urban World.
Yeah, because I actually years ago I went to an Urban World. That was a lot of fun. Maybe we crossed path one of those days. And the story about that guy who was going to go home and you convinced him to stay, and his movie won.
Yeah, that was the first Dave Talbert. That was the first festival. They were devastated, and I had to remind him. I said the jury didn't watch your film in the auditorium. They voted ahead of time. I said, you got a strong film. I wouldn't leave. And they were like, oh, we need to get back. We're broke. And we still talk to this day, and we text all the time and harass each other when some accomplishment happens. And we were texting just a couple of weeks ago, and I always laugh. I said, see, you would have left and we would have gave the award to somebody else. I said, you have your whole career to thank me for that. I don't let him forget it.
I wouldn't let him forget it either. Yep. And the fact that you got to the point where you actually got Tom Cruise on the stage and he's going like, you built a beautiful thing. Now kind of, I mean, was he promoting Mission Impossible 3 at that?
He had done the film with Jamie Foxx and Jada Pinkett Smith, which Collateral. He was in Collateral. So he was shooting Mission Impossible. So believe it or not, what had happened was it was pretty crazy. So Jamie and Jada confirmed that they would come, but Tom couldn't do it because he was literally shooting Mission Impossible in Europe. And I guess he and Jamie talked, and he said, you know what, I'm going to come in. And he flew himself in on his own plane and pulls the car up, gets out straight from the airport. And Tom literally said hello and kissed every baby, the whole line. We did it at Magic Johnson Theater up in Harlem, and we had the whole street red carpeted, whole city block. And Tom said hello to every single person. I'd never met a harder working actor or director ever in my life, then or since. And was so kind to everybody, whether it was the people, the popcorn or whatever. And then the next thing you know, we're taking pictures on the red carpet to be able to go in. And he just said, you know, this is a really wonderful thing that you've done. And it was funny. We had an after party at MTV that MTV had thrown, and Tom had invited Dougie Fresh to, which he's friends. And Dougie Fresh is on the mic, and Tom gets up on the table with Jamie. I mean, it was insane. So Urban World is a lot of fun. It's the largest minority festival in the world. And we have we've launched a lot of great careers out of it, from Tim Story, who directed Fantastic Four, to Ava DuVernay, to Malcolm
and the Garfield
Lee
movie.
I
actually like the Garfield movies, but he directed the Garfield movie.
Yeah. And then you have Kerry Washington and Zoe Saldana. They all came out of Urban World, and so it's a good thing. It's a really great fest.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, and by the way, clarification, everyone: Zoe Saldana is the only Oscar I'm glad Emilia Perez won, because Saldana is a goddess, in my opinion. I don't care if it was for the wrong movie. I'm glad she has an Oscar.
She deserved it. Her dance sequences and singing and her performance in that film, I didn't know it was a musical when I went and sat down.
I didn't know it was a musical. Of course, I saw it in the theaters. Thank you again, MoviePass. Yeah. And when I came out of it, it's like, so what was like? So it was a cartel transgender drama that was a musical. and my mom's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. What happens?
Right. That's a very good caption of it. I described it as a mix between a telenovela meets the Baz Luhrmann version of Romeo and Juliet.
I would say that's an apt comparison as well. And the fact that she came off as good as she was in what I consider to be a pretty terrible movie overall, like she was really working her butt off to make that thing work as best as she could. So.
It really was so unexpected. I went in, heard good things or whatever, and just what a surprise of a movie. It was just like, wow, okay. And no idea what I was going in for, which I love that moment the lights go down and you have no idea what's going to happen. And it all takes you places.
I feel so strongly about that. I typically skip as many previews as I can.
Yeah.
I show up late. I mean, partially because I show 25 minutes of previews now anyway, but it's like, I don't want especially since it's like I've got bad movie insurance. Like right. I don't feel like, why do I need to be convinced? I'll just go see it. And if I really don't like it, that much, I could just leave and it's no skin
Right.
off my back. And I've done that a
Right.
couple of times.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway, but there was another story in Black Found. Well, there were a couple stories. I mean, your first the drug rehab and how the nurse or whoever it was like kind of gave you a wake-up call about like, hey, look, I don't need to be wasting my time with someone who doesn't want to improve themselves. Only you can do that. Like that was a good story. But the funniest story was where you had a bad day and you called one of your friends because you had made up your mind you were going to kill Bob Weinstein. And I mean, at first it was kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm disappointed that didn't happen or not, but I figured it would be. I figured it would be a good time to ask the question. Really, they're that bad?
So we'll give this story away, but so I was an executive at Miramax, and when I was brought in, I largely worked on things that I came from the music industry, so I worked on things that had soundtracks, and I was working on Train Spotting, and so I was the product manager on Train Spotting, and so I was doing the soundtrack, and I had the movie and the poster and just doing everything. And I had secured, there was a concert. I got Iggy Pop during the performance of Lust for Life as the last song. I got them on this giant, which this wasn't, they didn't have LED screens. They didn't do this as much. Maybe Nine Inch Nails was doing this back then, but I got them to do Lust for Life and show the Train Spotting trailer while he performed Lust for Life. Huge, to me, it's like, I got this. And he's going to promo it. He's going to talk about it. And I get called into Bob's office, and Bob says, what have you done to earn your money today? And I was like, so I tell him what this great accomplishment I pull off. And he says, what radio station is it going to be on in Buffalo, New York? And I said, I don't know. I got the sheet on paper on my desk. I can go find out. And he goes, you don't know? You don't know?
I bet he doesn't know where all his soundtracks were going.
Right. Right. And he says, get out of my office. You disgust me. So I call one of my buddies, and I let him know I've decided that I'm okay with the electric chair or whatever they're going to give me, but I've decided I'm going to go kill Bob Weinstein. And he says, well, how are you going to do it? I said, I'm going to do it with my big pen. I'm going to stick it in his ear and I'm going to kill him, or his neck. And I'll just, and he says, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I'm serious. And he goes, but what about your family? About your, I go, they can come and see me, but I got to do this. And he says to me, have you had lunch yet? And I said, no. And he says, okay, well, they're going to take you down to central booking, and they're not going to feed you, and you're going to be in there a long time. I suggest you go get soda and some chips and a sandwich, and you eat first. So I went and ate a sandwich. And I'm here to say that sandwich saved Bob Weinstein's life. True story. True story.
We also want to put out for any lawyers out there, obviously this did not happen. He didn't actually kill Bob Weinstein.
He's fine, alive and well.
Well, he's alive anyway.
Yeah. I actually told him about. I actually saw him years after I had left working there, and we had lunch, and I was telling him about that one day, and so it's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, the Weinsteins. I mean, I'm guessing Bob wasn't as bad as Harvey, although you had some very unkind things to say about Harvey in this book as well. Of course, the sad thing was like everyone knew Harvey was a bad person. Maybe not to that extent, but like they put up with a lot of him just because he could get them awards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But But anyway, folks, we don't want to give away all of the stories, but I had to tack on those two because they were fascinating. And again, his book, Black Founder, is available on pretty much all the major retails. I prefer the audiobook, but check it out however you want and do it alongside with Mitch Lowe's book, because again, it's just fascinating to hear the two stories from two different point of views and the things that overlap and the things that don't overlap. I think that's very fascinating. And speaking of awards, MoviePass is technically kind of for an award because the documentary MoviePass movie Crash is nominated for an Emmy. Has that awards thing passed yet? Do we know the results of that yet?
No, it happens the Emmys are given out in November. So we've got some time. But a few weeks ago, I think first week in May, it got nominated for an Emmy. I actually thought someone was trying to punk me. I thought they sent it to me as a joke. But the producers said, hey, it got nominated for an Emmy. I thought, what are you talking about? It was like, and you know, I didn't realize that while there's a delay, it's a lot longer than the Oscar cycle. So, you know, you have the Oscar cycle that'll go, you're seeing a lot of the Oscar contenders in say December, and because they have to do their qualifying runs, and then March, you know, 90 days later, you got the Oscars. But the Emmys have a much longer tail to them. So we're clear in 2025 and the Emmys sit at the fourth quarter. And this film came out last summer and it was streamed last summer. And it was the #2 most watched film on HBO Max behind Dune during part of the summer. So I thought they were joking or teasing me that it was a year apart. I thought maybe someone was saying it should have been nominated for an Emmy. And then they're like, no, it really did get nominated for an Emmy. So we'll find out what happens.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if it wins or not. I'll hold my thoughts on the movie till afterwards. But I am curious when you're watching this movie because I mean, look, the unfortunate thing is MoviePass's failure is just going to be a part of the company's legacy. It was legendarily botched. I mean, they made a movie about it. As someone who created it and had to watch it, and also kind of you and your co-founder, Hame is his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you had like those millions of dollars of stock options that just like went away. It's like, how does it feel to basically watch, you know, through no real fault of your own, but still something that you built, just reiterating the failure so spectacularly? How does it feel to be watching that for you?
You know, when they approached me about optioning my rights for the story. So they had originally a Business Insider article, but they felt they needed a character's point of view. And clearly Mitch and Ted weren't going to be the leads. So it was down to say me or Hame or maybe one of the staff members, but they felt they really needed a character that had a through line. And as you know, they go back to my childhood and all of this stuff. So I optioned my story to them to be able to tell that. And so to me, I think the biggest tragedy would have been if no one ever got to know what happened with MoviePass. What was the truth? What really went down? And so that was more important. I was so happy that the story got told, because I think no one would have ever known the truth. Who were the founders? What really went down? How did it happen? And it was such a great company that people loved and fans loved. And a lot of people, I think for the biggest reason was a lot of people lost money hundreds of millions of dollars. It was $250 million worth of retail investors, like mom and pops. And I felt they needed to know what really went down. And that's why I wanted to option the story to make sure they got to hear what happened.
Yeah. I lost about $2,000 in MoviePass stock. That taught me a lot about what a sensible long-term investment was versus I personally like the product, so I'm going to buy stock to support the company. That was a tough lesson to learn.
I mean, and that's the right idea, but still there was a certain point where, you know, their math wasn't adding up and people got out as fast as they could. But I think even I buy things that are products that I believe in or I want to support. And I think that that's important. But this was so bad, it was criminal. That's why they're going to face jail time. But I felt that story needed to be told for all of those people out there who lost, you know.
Well, I'm glad you told the story. I'm sure while watching it, there were probably moments where you're watching it just kind of like, oh boy, I hate having to relive this again. Tell me, does your skin crawl every time Mitch Lowe pops up on screen?
So it's kind of like, this is going to sound weird, but this is the optimist view of the world. I think it's an important business school lesson, right? There's lessons to be learned about how board structure is, voting members. I tell entrepreneurs all the time, you know, your board structure is very important. Who gets to vote, who sits in those seats. And if they go in a different direction than you can find yourself being left out, and being able to control or manage that growth of your board is what happened to us. And so I think that those are, I feel like it's a very important movie that everybody who's ever started a business and you're in the middle of that, you need to watch. It is a cautionary tale about what can happen when you're successful. This wasn't a case of it was a bad idea, it didn't work, and nobody liked it. This is a case of it worked, and fans loved it, and it was huge, and it was worth $500 million. So that's the point, is it's not just when things go wrong, it's when things go right that you get a whole nother crop of people who want what you've built and want to take it from you. And I think that's important for everyone to watch.
Yeah. You know, I could see that. You know, there's another documentary that could kind of be considered its distant cousin called Startup.com, which is about a couple guys who came up with a website idea, and they started raising capital. They were going on talk shows, and the company was worth like hundreds of millions of dollars. But in the midst of promoting it, nobody actually stopped to look at the website and realize that it sucked. And the business collapsed pretty much overnight because it was a non-functioning website. So that along with MoviePass, Movie Crash, I will agree with Business School. Those are probably two documentaries. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. It's like, this is what can happen if you count your chickens before they roost, and this is what can happen if they come to roost and then you don't nurture them the way that they should be nurtured. Now, I'm gonna, just because I like transparency, this is my personal website. This is my full review. There you are, picture of you.
Yes.
Of you. Now, I gave it 2.5 stars, which is technically not a recommendation, but when you read my review, it's primarily because I've invested myself so much in the MoviePass story. Like, before this became a general movie channel, this was a MoviePass fan site for all intents and purposes. So I knew so much about the MoviePass experience that I just kept going like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? And it's like, dude, you could have made a 6-episode miniseries. Series. I feel like you're actually leaving a lot of vital stuff out of this. So but I did admit, near the end of the review, that if you had not known any of this before, it was a great launching point for what I hoped would be a better product about the whole situation.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line. So hopefully you aren't upset that I have that opinion.
No, I think your commentary about that, it originally was going to be 2 or 3 parts. And what their data came back was a single episode has a higher viewership. What they found was the first one's watch, and then you lose like 50 or 60% of people don't go to the next segment. And so they decided, and look, it's HBO and they're doing something right. This was it was Mark Wahlberg's company, Unrealistic Ideas. They got nominated. This is the same team that did McMillions. And so that was nominated for an Emmy.
That was great.
So this is definitely done by some smart people, and their audience was people who had some distance from it and didn't know. And kind of the style was they introduce you from what you think you know. You start in the middle of the story, and then they go, Omar's character says, well, that's not how it started. And then they take you to the beginning. And I thought that was an original way of doing it versus going completely linear. Right now it's nominated for an Emmy, so we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, the way that movie opened, like I can see whenever they make the live action dramatization of the movie, which I'm pushing for John David Washington to play you. I think it would be.
You know what someone said? Someone said, I'll take that as a wonderful compliment. Someone said Sterling K. Brown should play me.
I could see that too. Yeah. Actually, I could probably now see that more because he's already played a businessman in This Is Us. So that might even be more appropriate. It's a shame Denzel's not 20 years younger, because I mean, he would have nailed you. It's also a shame that Philip Seymour Hoffman's not around, because I think he would have made a great Roger Ebert, like for whenever they make the Roger Ebert movie.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yep. But yeah, that opening where it's like I could even see them like showing like all the news articles, and it claps and the screen goes to black, and the narrator goes like, "But that's not how it happened," and then it starts telling the story of like when little Stacy was 5 years old with dreams to be bigger than Elon Musk, and then they take the story from there.
Exactly.
Josh, of course. By the way, I will give Mitchell credit. He does not shy away from interviews, despite. We'll end on this one. Despite kind of getting his hand caught in the cookie jar, as they say. I will give him credit for still talking about that with people like the MoviePass, Movie Crash people. But this must have been how okay, I'm not even going to put words in your thoughts. How did it feel to find out that Ted and Mitch had basically admitted to wire fraud and like, we did criminal stuff in this company? How did that feel like?
Well, they denied it. And then even in the documentary, they've got audio of them, admitting things, and there's files. And so we knew that the emails and the files were there. It was just a matter of time. So it wasn't a surprise, but they figured they could maneuver out of it, and it didn't work out for them. But it wasn't shocking, because we kind of know, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, admittingly, no one, when they first come, they say you're under arrest, you're not going to plead guilty, because you don't really know what they have at the end of the day. You might as well feign ignorance, because sometimes that evidence isn't as strong as they think it is. That's why Michael Jackson was acquitted, because the actual evidence, it was not going in the prosecutor's favor. People forget.
Right.
but in this case, yeah, the emails existed in the file. So, but like when you let's pretend newspapers are still a thing. You open the newspaper, you see the headline: former MoviePass executive consents and pleads guilty in parallel SEC and DOJ cases.
Mhm.
What's the first thought that goes through your mind?
You know, it was retribution, and that the story finally got told. And I think the doc and the team doing that, quite often the documentaries put a pressure on, you can't hide from a case when there's if HBO, Netflix, or someone's going to take the time and go spend the money on a documentary, often that thing's going to get attention because the DOJ, they don't want to be seen as ignoring very big stuff that the press or media or even entertainment companies feel time should be spent on. So it pushes those up to the top. And so I think that having the documentary caused them to focus on it and help move it to its natural state, where maybe if it didn't, it wouldn't have happened. So
there's like a saying that there's 3 documentary companies you don't want to talk to, because if they're talking to you, they've got something you probably don't want, and it's HBO, right, Showtime, and Michael Moore.
Right. Probably. And now you could probably add Netflix to that stack if they're doing something on you.
Maybe, but Netflix also does so many. Like I watched the Tylenol murders, and look, it was interesting, but they kind of get into the whole conspiratorial aspect of things, where it's like, well, yeah, you can't prove that this didn't happen, but you're not really presenting a good case that this did happen,
right?
Either. So I've got my. I don't want to keep you long ranting about Netflix documentaries, because I have my issue with many of them. Like, some of their documentaries, I have the same issue I have with Michael Moore, where it's like, gosh, I agree with what you're saying, but I hate the way you're doing this.
Right.
Because you're doing this in the worst possible way that you could be doing it. So anyway, finally, are there any oops, sorry, that was the wrong button to push. Finally, and then I will let you go. Do you have any other huge plans for MoviePass that you can't talk about right now? They're definitely in the works.
I will get in my time machine and fly forward and come back. Mogul is to me a really big opportunity, and our view is it can create a level of fan engagement and fandom that I think can really excite the movie industry. Not only in a put your money where your mouth is, but also in a driving attendance and beating records and winning. And I think that sportsmanship that the movie industry hasn't had, that we see that kind of, they literally make, they make fast food commercials about people watching sporting events, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that movies have the same energy and excitement, but you don't get the same punch, because the sports teams have all done a great job, and fandom is baked in hardcore there. And I think we can bring some of that, and that's really an exciting future to me. And I hope the next time you and I are on the show, you and I will make some predictions, and maybe before we're finished, we'll see who got as close to winning those predictions. So we'll see.
Oh, that would be great. Just a heads up, I'm actually really terrible about making predictions, because I stupidly base my predictions on the quality of the movies, which turns out is actually a really bad metric to be making predictions based on.
Then you and I will both be. I am always messing up on Oscar predictions and thinking something should qualify that don't. So we'll probably be in the same boat.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. One more question. This was something that I had just thought about. about. Since we do have a bunch of loyal MoviePass fans, would there be a way that I could get a signed copy of your book as a giveaway for our loyal MoviePass viewers?
100%. I'd be honored to do that. Yes, we will get you a signed copy, maybe even a few. And that would make me very happy to be able to give that to someone.
Oh, okay. So, folks, if you are watching or listening to this, if you go to the Encore app, which is a video-based e-commerce site, search iCritic, and very soon we are going to be giving away one or maybe even two signed copies of Stacy's book, Black Founder. And when you win it, then you're going to have to buy the audiobook because you're not going to want to damage that book. Actually, well, either way, it's a great book. Thank you so much for doing that for us. And also, I forgot to mention this at the beginning because we got so into it, but this is our first podcast live stream on the new streaming platform Kick, which has been launched as a Twitch competitor. So you are our first guest as we live stream on Kick, Twitch, and of course YouTube. And for everyone else, if you like interviews like this, you can subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, Deezer, all your podcasting platforms of choice. And as always, I guess we'll see you at the movies. Take care, everyone.